Pastor Dan.
Thank you. Whew, good to see all your faces today. It's good to shake hands with you as you walk in too. All right, we're going to start off here. Do you really trust Jesus? Like fully? And I would gather to guess the honest answer to that is probably not. Right? Because to fully trust someone, you would do everything they tell you to do. Right? So, it's hard to say we fully trust Christ. I think theoretically, yes. In terms of practice, a lot harder. Hopefully, though, you're growing to trust Christ more each day as you see his trustworthiness. So trusting in and following Jesus is a very difficult thing to do. I think we can just admit that. And there are a lot of things that get in our way, and we're going to see some of the things that get in the way for the disciples. But these are some common things that a lot of us experience. Grief over unexpected loss, right? It just slaps you out of nowhere, and you can't help but question, where is God? Where is his power? Where is his intervention in my life? What happened? How about unmet expectations of what it's going to look like to follow Jesus? Like, a lot of times we come in thinking it's this, and then as things unfold, we're like, this is not exactly what I thought it was. This is a lot harder, right? So unmet expectations can get us. Another problem that a lot of people do encounter over the course of a lifetime of following Christ is, and this is like, I don't want to say this because it kind of points a finger at me, but corrupt religious authorities. There are a lot of people that have been hurt deeply by pastors and church leaders who've sinned. It's hard. Another thing that messes us up in this journey of trusting Christ more is just the straight up lies from the enemy, right? I mean, Satan is working overtime to thwart us from following Christ, right? So pile a few of those things up and you can quickly find yourself paralyzed and unable to take the next step. So I want to ask you this question as we begin to dive into this. What makes it hard for you to trust Jesus? Is there one thing you can say specifically that you would go, this is probably the biggest thing right now? Now, it probably changes over the course of your lifetime, right? But right now, what is the biggest thing that really makes it hard to trust him entirely? So this Easter, we definitely want to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus and the victory that he's given to us and afforded to us. But we also want to wrestle with some doubts. And with that, we're going to walk, I think, a better faith journey if we look those things square in the face and address them. Bottom line, following Jesus isn't easy. And it wasn't easy for the original disciples. It's never been easy. And today, we're going to look at some of those things up close and try to trust Jesus more fully. So if you have a Bible or if you have an app on your phone that you want to go to, we're headed to Matthew chapter 28. And Matthew 28 is just the unfolding of Jesus' resurrection according to Matthew, right? This is his account. And just 3 days prior, the disciples had experienced this previously unimaginable situation. Jesus had been betrayed, arrested, illegally tried, tortured, executed, and buried. The disciples are caught so off guard, they scatter, right? It doesn't say his name, but it's only in the Gospel of Mark. Mark records a young man leaving that garden where Jesus is arrested, draped in a bed sheet. Okay, he's otherwise naked, running off into the night. So that's one. Peter tries to stay with Jesus, tries to follow the trial. Over the course of the night, denies Jesus 3 times and is just crushed by the end. John's the only one that seems to maintain physical proximity even to Jesus, and he's there at the foot of the cross as Jesus dies, and as Jesus is breathing his last breaths, Jesus puts John in charge of caring for Mary. I mean, everything about this is just heartbreaking for these guys. Judas so distraught over how the betrayal thing all turned out. Maybe it finally set in what was happening, or maybe he was hoping for a different outcome. I don't know, but he hangs himself. It's just chaos. And now Jesus is dead and the disciples are shaken to the core. All they have left, disappointment, sadness, and unexpected loss. But amazing is about to happen, right? Matthew 28, verse 1. Now after the Sabbath, as it began to dawn during the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to look at the grave, and behold, a severe earthquake had occurred, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled away the stone and sat upon it. And his appearance was like lightning, and his clothing was as white as snow. And the guards shook for fear of him, and became like dead men. The angels said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who has been crucified. He is not here, for he has risen just as he said. Come and see the place where he was lying. Go quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead, and behold, he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. Behold, I have told you." Talk about shocking. There's a lot of stuff happening in this paragraph. An earthquake, right? A resurrection. A stone that's rolled away from the tomb. An angel that rolls away the stone from the tomb. Guards passing out, presumably in fear. Still laying there on the ground when the women show up. Right? If no one had seen those, how would we have recorded them? So as the women show up to this tomb, like there's still two guards lying there that look dead. So it makes sense that the angel's going, "It's okay. It's okay." The message from the angel is curious to say the least. Essentially, it's this: Jesus did what he said he would do. You might feel betrayed, you might feel confused, but listen, at the end of the day, you can still trust him. He did what he said he would do. He's alive. Go tell the disciples. He'll be in Galilee. And the women are both overjoyed and terrified. And wouldn't you feel overjoyed and terrified? Right? So on their way to obey the angel, Jesus steps in and proves to these women beyond a shadow of a doubt that he can be trusted, that he is alive, just like he said he would be. In verse 8 it says, "And they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy, and they ran to report it to the disciples. And behold, Jesus met them and greeted them. And they came up and took hold of his feet, and they worshiped him. And Jesus said to them, 'Do not be afraid. Go and take word to my brethren to leave for Galilee, and there they will see me.'" Now, these women are right to worship Jesus. He's God, and he's alive. He's overcome death. He's worthy of our worship. He paid for our sin. He conquers death and victory. And lovingly, Jesus assures them that they now have nothing to fear. They just need to trust him, which they continue to do. As they race off to spread this good news, there's a second race that happens, a race we don't pay a whole lot of attention to. The guards have regained consciousness. It must be what happened. They've regained consciousness. And they take off to go explain the pickle that they're now in. See, their job was one thing: prevent the disciples from tampering with this grave. Right? Now, you had one thing to do. One thing. Verse 11. "Now while they were on their way," the women, "some of the guards came to the city and reported to the chief priests all that had happened. And when they had assembled with the elders and consulted together, they gave a large sum of money to the soldiers and said, 'You are to say,'" the official statement is this, "'His disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep. And if this should come to the governor's ears, We will win him over and keep you out of trouble." They took the money and they did as they had been instructed. And the story was widely spread among the Jews and is to this day. So if what the guards claim to have had happened, or if what they claimed to occur had occurred, they would not have been there to tell the people about it. Do you know what the punishment was for failing to, maintain your job position, to do your duty? Right? You get executed. You had one job. You failed. So for guards to run around and tell people, "We fell asleep," there's a big hole in this story. How are you here to tell us about this falling asleep that you said occurred? Right? Because, let's say nothing had happened and they fell asleep. They probably would have got away with it. But you're telling us the one thing you were supposed to do happened while you fell asleep, and you're here to tell us all about it. It doesn't add up. It does not add up. The guards didn't come up with this lie. It would have been a dumb thing for them to come up with. This cover-up and this bribery to hide the miracle of Jesus' resurrection is led by the very people who are supposed to be helping people see God, helping people recognize the Messiah. The people you should be able to trust are the ones Satan uses to conceal the truth. So malicious. Unfortunately, the same happens today. And I would say the biggest way it happens today is when pastors won't talk about sin. How will people know to repent if Christian leaders tell them their happiness is the most important thing? How? So, like the chief priests and the elders in Israel, we have a lot of Christian leaders, and Christians in general, honestly, creating confusion instead of revealing the way, the truth, and the life, which is Jesus. So I think we can see how doubt may have crept in this whole experience, right? Think about all that they've been through. They've experienced grief over this unexpected loss. They have unmet expectations and disappointments over how this has all gone down. It's not what they thought. You have corrupt religious authorities muddying the waters, and it's just straight lies from the enemy of their soul, Satan. Now, after these events that we've just read, verses 1 through 15, there's about a week span that happens before verse 16, okay? So I want to give you a little rundown of what happens in that week, okay? In that week, before we get to verse 16, before appearing to a larger group, we know that according to 1 Corinthians 15:5, Peter is the first one to encounter Jesus of the men, right? Because the women have already encountered him. But Peter's the first one, 1 Corinthians 15:5. And then Jesus appears to 10 of the apostles in the upper room, right? Had they gone to Galilee? Not yet. Okay, so he appears to them. And the two that are not present are Judas and Thomas. So Thomas then makes his big speech about, I'm not in until I touch the holes. I want to see him with my eyes, and I want to touch the holes in his hand. So Jesus appears another time, this time to all 11 of them, in John 20, verse 26, and Thomas gets his wish. And after that, Jesus appears to 7 more of them as they're out fishing in a boat, and he's on the sea, or on the shore, and Peter jumps out and swims to him, and they have that little sit down at the fire where Jesus asked Peter, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, I love you. Then feed my sheep. 3 times. 3 denials, 3 confessions or professions of love. These appearances all happened in that first week after Jesus' resurrection, but we still have not arrived at the mountain in Galilee that verse 16 references, and where Jesus had told the women, hey, tell them to go here. So of those 11 disciples, all of them had encountered the resurrected Jesus at least once. Peter has encountered Jesus 4 times in that week. Okay? Most of them are probably in the 3 range. 3. But everybody at least once, with their eyes, seen him, talked to him. That's important because look what happens in verse 16. But the 11 disciples proceeded to Galilee, to the mountain which Jesus designated, and when they saw him, they worshiped him. But some were doubtful. Some were worshipful. They were ready. This is probably Peter, right? He's for sure in that group. Not sure who else, but for sure him. They run to Jesus. They believed. They celebrated. They jumped in with both feet. Despite all the confusion and the fear and the lies and the disappointments, they were ready to trust Jesus fully, to obey. But there's another group, and it wasn't just Thomas. Okay? Thomas gets all the bad rap. But it wasn't just him. It was a group. It says some were doubtful. What does it mean when it says some were doubtful? They'd all seen him, right? So it's not, is that Jesus? That's not the question, right? Thomas had touched his wounds. They'd watched him eat. They knew he was alive. So what is it they doubted? It seems to me that this hesitancy, this doubt is a hesitancy to fully trust Jesus. They're hesitant. They didn't run to Jesus. They held back. More of a wait-and-see approach. Let's see how he handles the other guys. We're not quite ready yet. Maybe it would be even more of a paralyzed by indecision type of moment. Have you ever had one of those moments where you just are like, I don't know what to do? And you just kind of lock up? They weren't ready to worship Jesus. Maybe they were feeling, like their heart couldn't handle it if Jesus disappointed them again. Maybe they didn't know if they could really treat Jesus as Lord of their lives. Maybe they weren't sure if they could really follow. But regardless of their reason, some of Jesus' closest followers, this is the 11, who'd been with him for years and seen the miracles, were still reluctant and doubtful. Still here even a week out from the resurrection. What step needs to be taken to get them on board? Are they supposed to just ignore their doubts? Are they supposed to dig deeper for greater faith? Like, if I only had more faith. What will they need to do to cross over from doubt to trust, from reluctance to disobedience? What has to happen? Let me ask you this. Have you ever been uncertain or unsure in your walk? Have you ever struggled to trust Jesus with your life? Not just whether you live or die, but like how it plays out. Have you ever been fearful of the next step? What's amazing here is these disciples showed up and didn't hide their struggle. But that question, what do they need to cross that line? It does linger. what is the next step for them? And this is the thing I find so amazing about this whole passage. Ready? Look at verse 18. Just the first few words. Jesus came up and spoke to them. It's so easy to read right past that, but Jesus didn't just stay with the people worshiping him, right? He approached those who were still struggling to talk to them, to bring them in. Just like how Jesus described that parable of the sheep, the 99, he gets the 99 safely in the pen. And what does he do? He goes after the one that's lost, the one that's stuck, struggling. Jesus goes after them. Just like the father in the parable of the prodigal son, when he's watching the horizon for his son, watching. And as soon as that figure comes up over the hill, the father rips up his cloak and begins to run. Completely undignified, running to that one that would have the courage even just to come within view. That's our Jesus. And so the thing that blew me away about this verse is that Jesus has every reason to rebuke their lack of faith, right? Well, these are the 5 or 6 or so. These are the ones I'm going to work with. The rest of you can go kick rocks. But instead, Jesus takes the next step. I think so many times we get stuck going, okay, I got to take the next step, and I don't know what it is. And Jesus is going, okay, I'll take the next step. You will? And then Jesus goes to these that have doubted, that have struggled. And he tells them that he has been given all authority on heaven and on earth. And he will be with them always and forever. And Jesus lets them know that they can trust him, and they must teach others to do the same. That's where it's at. I have to think that Jesus tells them exactly what they needed to hear. He dealt exactly with their doubts, with their struggles. And here's what I want to know today. What doubts are getting in your way? What's keeping you from fully being able to trust Jesus? Like the disciples, you've shown up to encounter a risen Lord. You came to celebrate Easter, right? But there's a good chance you still showed up here today with some measure of doubt, confusion, pain, disappointment, frustration. Because these are human experiences. So I want to close here with this just by inviting you to close your eyes and inviting you to picture yourself as one of those disciples. If there's things you've struggled with and that are holding you back, close your eyes and just picture Jesus is off there. He's being celebrated and worshiped, and you're not ready to go, or there's something yet holding you back. Now imagine that he walks to you. What do you need to hear? What doubts are you still dealing with? I want to tell you that Jesus can still meet us right there in our mind. And he's ready to step toward you, not run from you. And he wants you to share your struggles with him. And he wants to speak to those struggles. So I want to give you just a moment here in prayer to lay those struggles at his feet and ask him to speak to you. Jesus, we know that you are listening, so attentive to us. And even before we can speak, you already know, maybe better than we know, the true struggles we have. And you invite us to trust you and to follow you. And you know stuff gets in our way. But today, as you've heard probably 175 people share their struggle, I just ask that you would meet each one of us here and draw us close. Remind us that you're with us, that you have authority, you love us, you want to walk with us, you want us to walk with you. So Lord, give us the faith and the courage and the hope and the trust to live a life of worship to you. Thank you for the patience you have with us. Thank you for the power that you have at work in our lives. Lord, you're capable of resurrection, so you're capable of anything. Lord, help us never to doubt that you love us, and always to run to you, not hide from you. We pray all these things in your name.